Last week, we examined that consumers do not immediately purchase after seeing a product or brand advertisement, and how they make decisions in the research and evaluation phase we call the messy middle.
Today, we are looking at the financial side of the matter. We are putting on the table that very justified question managers think about a lot. Despite allocating such serious budgets to marketing, why are we not getting the sales we expect?
When we examine marketing plans, there is a fundamental structural mistake we generally see. The budget is allocated only to the very beginning and the very end. In fact, the other day, while reviewing a brand's annual planning, I saw exactly this. They had allocated budget only to TV advertisements and the Buy Now buttons at the very end. That huge process in between is completely empty.
Absolutely. Most companies either use the budget at the very top to create brand awareness or spend it directly on performance marketing at the very end. However, the stage where the customer actually makes the decision, where they conduct long research and comparisons, is left without any budget.
So, what are the consequences of this extreme distribution where the weight is piled only on two ends? How does this gap in the research phase affect the customer's purchase journey, and where did those big budgets go at the end of the day?
The budget loss happens exactly in that empty area. As a brand, you create a purchase need in the consumer with your own budget. But when the customer starts researching that product,
You do not appear in front of them on review sites, guides, or forums.
exactly, you are not in user reviews, blogs, guides, dictionaries, or videos. In other words, you are completely absent at that most critical decision point where the customer will build trust.
Think about it. You create demand in the market with your own money. But when the customer, at that moment of confusion, conducts detailed research, they go to your competitor who provides the right information in the right place. In a way, you are knowingly making the investment for someone else.
Yes, exactly for this reason. With your advertising budget, you are actually financing the sales of your competitor who is strong in the research area.
So, how will we fix this structural mistake in budget planning? Today, at the Insight Atlas table, we are talking step by step about how you will turn your marketing investments into your own company sales, not your competitors. Let's begin. Google's messy middle research actually proves how big a financial mistake it is to pile the budget only at the very beginning and the very end. When I examined the report, those data points also caught my attention a lot. How do you read those numbers?
The numbers are very clear. Google analyzes 31,000 customers and 310,000 purchase scenarios in the UK. According to the research, just being visible in that middle area alone causes 33% of consumers to give up their first choice and turn to another brand.
33%? An incredible rate. So if brands are not present in that middle area, they instantly lose 1/3 of the budget they spent on awareness to a competitor who is visible there.
Absolutely. The customer sees the advertisement and gets interested, but does not complete the purchase immediately. They go and start doing independent research by saying, which model should I choose? What do users say? The budget leakage happens exactly at these moments.
Yes, the other day while buying a new phone, I did exactly this. Instead of pressing the buy button in the ad, I opened a tab and searched what are the disadvantages compared to similar models. So where does the brand stand while the customer is asking these questions?
Most of the time, nowhere, because when the customer researches the product or the brand, they cannot find a guiding content, a comparison table, or information they can trust belonging to your brand. Since companies do not allocate budget to that area, the customer is left alone with the contents of your competitor who invests here.
So how does the picture change when we add strategies such as social proof or expert assurance to this middle area that is left without budget? Let's talk about that fictional brand test in the study, because the researchers followed a very interesting method there to measure purchasing habits.
The simulations created are really striking. They conduct tests in many sectors, from financial services to fast-moving consumer goods. On one side of the experiment, they place the consumer's favorite brand that they have been buying for years and trust.
And right across from it, they place a completely fictional brand whose name they hear for the first time at that moment, right?
Exactly. The two options are presented directly side by side.
So, logically, shouldn't consumers choose that reliable brand everyone has known for years? What did this fictional brand do to crush brands that allocate large budgets to marketing on their own field?
The fictional brand did not waste time explaining the technical details of the product or production processes. Instead, it focused entirely on triggering cognitive shortcuts that accelerate the customer's decision-making.
So, while known brands list pages of product features, the fictional brand closed the sale just by showing high user reviews, free return options, comparisons, information guides, and expert approval. It won because it reduced the customer's mental load.
We said the fictional brand triggered cognitive shortcuts instead of product features. In fact, this is the consumer's way of escaping information overload, right? Because no one wants to read pages of technical features.
Absolutely. The human brain uses automatic filters to avoid getting tired when making decisions. It only looks at very clear and simple signals, such as, will it do my job? Will it solve my problem? Has someone else bought this? Is it approved by an expert? Or will it reach me immediately?
So the fictional brand managed to break years of brand loyalty within seconds just by giving these simple signals. So how did they build this trust in the social space exactly? After all, it is not enough to tell the customer, we sell a good product.
Of course it's not enough. The fictional brand supported social proof entirely with concrete data. They did not just put a star rating and move on. They gave clear numbers such as full score from 5,000 users.
They even presented the community's preference as proof with the label best-selling product in its category.
Yes, and in addition to that, they also added the missing expert assurance by saying approved by independent laboratories.
A new brand is always a risk for the consumer. How did they reduce this perception of risk so quickly? The other day, when I saw the text, 120 people are currently viewing this product on an e-commerce site, I felt the need to complete the transaction immediately. Did they apply a similar method?
Exactly right. In addition to social signals, they also offered very clear guarantees that give confidence. Messages like free return within 30 days or 98% customer satisfaction rate eliminated the consumer's concern about making a mistake or regretting it.
And on top of that, they added that sense of instant popularity I mentioned.
Exactly. Even if the consumer had never heard of the brand before, the moment they saw the approval of experts and a large user base behind it, they accepted the completely unknown option as the most reliable choice.
Let's come to the most striking data then. We say they broke brand loyalty, but at what level did these rates actually occur?
73% of consumers abandoned the brand they knew and trusted for years and chose the fictional brand that doesn't even exist. Even in the credit card sector, where trust is the hardest to establish, the fictional brand received 87% of preferences.
87%? In an area like credit cards, an incredible rate. This statistic is actually mathematical proof of how marketing budgets are wasted. We create demand with our own money, but the customer goes to the brand that provides the right information and the competitor closes the sale there. So how will companies solve this budget loss?
The solution lies in fundamentally changing the mindset. Instead of constantly saying, buy, it's necessary to say, I present you the information you need to make the right decision.
So we completely give up seeing the middle area where evaluation is made as an aggressive sales point. Am I understanding correctly?
Absolutely. That place is not a sales arena. It's a guidance stage. The first thing companies need to do is to meet the customer's need for comparison directly on their own field without leaving it to competitor platforms.
Let's make this concrete on the B2B side, that is, with a corporate example. Let's say we are a brand that offers IT infrastructure and server solutions to companies. The manager saw our advertisement and also needs the service, but of course, they do not immediately give that high-budget purchase approval.
Of course not. They go directly to a search engine and type, this for high-traffic systems is a physical server more advantageous or a cloud solution.
Here is the breaking point. Where should the brand stand exactly when this search is made? In a B2B case study we examined the other day, we saw that the company produced pages of content that only praised its own product. Does this work?
It does not work. On the contrary, it causes loss of trust. Before the customer gets lost in different forums and videos, they should encounter an objective cost and performance comparison guide prepared by you.
So instead of saying our system is the best, we should present a transparent, technical table that explains in which scenario which system falls short and which one has a higher return on investment.
Exactly. When the decision maker examines this transparent table, they don't get up from the table and go to the competitor. They conclude, this company knows the mathematics of the job, I can entrust my infrastructure to them.
In short, what closes the corporate sale is not the advertisement you publish on television or social media, but this technical guidance you provide in the middle area. So what should be the first financial step managers need to take when they put budget tables in front of them? How will they stop the leakage?
Very clear. They have to take part of the budget from those general awareness campaigns and shift it to this area where the customer conducts research. So, we will increase our presence in consumer forums. We will take place on independent review sites.
And you will present your products not only with their features, but with comparable, concrete benefits. Unless you place your visibility in the middle of the purchase journey, you will continue to build a market for your competitor.
Then let's come to the main question. How will companies implement this theoretical knowledge in the field? How will we integrate the 4 cognitive shortcuts at the core of the research into our own budget plans? How will brands manage this information complexity in the customer's mind in their own favor?
Google's research offers companies a very clear exit strategy. Brands that simplify the information complexity the consumer encounters during the research phase win. The first step to achieve this simplification is to use decision filters, academically called category heuristics.
Let's examine this concept a little more closely. What exactly is category heuristics? How does our brain run these filters during the purchase process?
Heuristics are automatic decision-making mechanisms that our brain uses to save energy in complex processes.
So our brain takes shortcuts to avoid information overload.
Exactly. When examining a product, the consumer does not want to read hundreds of technical details and get mentally tired. Instead, they filter quickly and directly look for a few of the most fundamental features of the product category.
Then brands need to stop listing pages of product features on e-commerce sites.
Absolutely. The category heuristic the customer is looking for is the most basic and defining benefit of the product. What brands need to do is not to drown the customer in technical details,
but to present the basic features they are looking for in the fastest and clearest way.
Exactly.
Can we examine decision filters through a real test case? When companies sell a complex product with too many features, how should they position these filters on the screen?
Let's look at the example of internet service providers in the research. When choosing a new internet package, consumers do not want to read infrastructure technologies or modem frequencies.
True, they don't. In fact, when I chose a new package for my home, I didn't look at cable types at all. I directly looked for speed. And in the test, they do exactly this, right? They add only 2 basic filters to the brand's offer.
Exactly. They only put the phrases uninterrupted 100 Mbps speed and unlimited data on the screen. The result is very clear. Consumers' brand preference instantly shifts to this offer.
Because the customer gets rid of the burden of analyzing technical data on that page and focuses directly on the result they are looking for. So how does the picture shape when B2B, that is, intercompany sales, come into play? Is the same simplicity valid in corporate purchases?
Yes, it is. B2B buyers are also human at the end of the day and go through the same mental processes.
So a general manager actually makes the same decisions when purchasing for their company.
Exactly. For example, let's say you're selling corporate accounting software. Your competitors explain coding languages and server security protocols in detail on the product page.
Whereas the manager at that moment just wants to know whether it will work for their business. When you write one-click integration with your existing banking systems and 100% compliant with regulations,
you meet the first decision filters the corporate buyer is looking for. The buyer does not make unnecessary technical reading on that page and puts you at the top of the evaluation list.
we narrowed the options with decision filters and made things easier for the customer. But we know that the customer still does not press the buy button. They continue researching and comparing. What is the second mechanism that comes into play at this stage?
The second mechanism is social proof. When people are undecided, they want to trust the brand and validate their decisions by looking at what others do.
Because they are afraid of making a mistake and regretting it while spending their money.
Exactly. The way to eliminate this fear is to present the approval of people who have previously bought and experienced the product.
But there is a contradiction here. Today, almost every website we visit has customer reviews. Despite this, brands continue to lose sales. Where does the line between using social proof correctly and incorrectly begin?
The main difference is about where and how social proof is presented. Simply adding a few anonymous "I was very satisfied" comments on the homepage no longer convinces the consumer.
Yes, I saw it the other day on an e-commerce site. There were only initials of names and 5 stars. As a consumer, it did not feel convincing at all.
That's completely normal. The car insurance test in Google's research explains this very clearly.
The insurance sector is one of the areas where the element of trust is the most decisive. What kind of scenario did they set up in this test?
The researchers placed a completely unknown new competitor against the most well-known and trusted insurance company in the market. The known brand had no customer evaluations in any area.
So it relied only on its brand and the awareness built over years. So what did this fictional brand whose name wasn't even known do to convince the customer against that big insurance company?
It added only this phrase right next to its offer: 4.8 stars out of 5 from policyholders. And of course, it also showed the number of real customers who gave this approval. With this social proof based on clear numerical data alone, it gained direct competitive advantage.
So, did years of brand awareness lose to just a star rating and customer reviews? What was exactly the reaction of consumers?
A very large portion of consumers abandoned the reliable and known brand and chose the new brand. Social proof is such a powerful tool that it can single-handedly erase the huge advantage created by brand awareness.
Then brands need to stop saying we're the best in the industry. Instead, saying 10,000 people chose us, here are their experiences, completely changes the situation.
Exactly, and they must place this with clear data on product pages, right below the Add to Cart button.
Okay, we use the power of the crowd with social proof, but there is something I'm wondering. The other day, I was examining a health technology product. There were thousands of positive reviews, but I still wasn't convinced. In risky investments like health, finance, or advanced technology, the voice of the crowd alone seems to not be enough.
That's a very accurate observation, because at that moment, the customer is looking for more professional validation. That's exactly where our third strategy, expert validation, comes into play.
So, while social proof tells us this product is popular, expert validation says this product is technically the right choice.
Exactly. When making a risky or costly decision, the consumer wants a professional authority to share the responsibility.
So, how was the impact of expert validation on sales measured numerically in Google's tests?
The skincare product test is the clearest example. They added a fictional brand next to consumers' favorite brands, and they only wrote "approved by independent dermatologists and tested in laboratories" in its features.
Did just these 2 sentences directly change the preference rate of the brand?
Yes, it changed immediately, because the customer instinctively forms this logic. If this expert approved it, I am not wasting my money.
In a way, they transfer the risk of making a mistake to the expert. So when we move to the corporate side, B2B, how should expert validation be structured in large deals where budgets reach millions of dollars?
On the B2B side, the equivalent of this expert validation is the reports of independent research organizations in the industry. Think of a general manager who will establish a new server infrastructure for their company.
They will not make a decision based on what your own sales representative says, of course.
Absolutely not. They directly look at reports of independent technology analysts in that field. If you can present the statement, "We were selected as a leader in the industry report" on your website or proposal file with an official document,
You may shorten the approval process on the other side's board of directors by half.
exactly, because you transfer the professional risk on the decision maker to the report of an independent expert.
We narrowed the options with decision filters. We built trust with social proof. We eliminated professional risk with expert validation. The customer is convinced and added the product to the cart.
But right here, that critical situation in e-commerce data appears.
Yes, those famous cart abandonment rates. 70% of consumers who add products to the cart leave the site without completing the purchase.
70% is really a very high rate. The product is liked, the price is accepted, so why does the customer give up pressing that final button when everything is ready? I do this often too. I say, I made my decision, I will buy this tonight on my computer, and close the tab.
And the moment you close that tab, your risk of falling back into information complexity is very high because the human brain is programmed to postpone decisions. That is why we need to prevent this final abandonment with our fourth shortcut, the principle of the power of now.
How does the power of now break the postponement reflex in the consumer's brain?
The faster people reach the benefit they will gain, the higher they perceive the value of that benefit. They measured this very clearly in the retail test in Google's research.
You were talking about the test based on delivery times, I suppose.
Exactly. On one side, standard 3 to 5 business day delivery. On the other side, the next day delivery option. Consumers' decisions shifted to fast delivery within seconds.
Within seconds. So the idea of immediate ownership defeats the fatigue of continuing research. Brands must prove to the customer on the payment page that they will not have to wait.
Yes, and it should not be considered only as physical shipping.
Absolutely. The other day, I was examining a software subscription. It said, buy now, start using within 5 minutes on the screen. It directly increases the desire to act at that moment.
This also applies to service sales, such as consulting. Saying, approve the contract, your analysis report will be on your desk within 24 hours, physically prevents the customer from leaving that table and considering other alternatives. You must connect the action to an immediate reward.
We've drawn the 4 basic principles very clearly. The data tells us this: not those who spend their budget only on showing ads, but those who meet the information need in the middle of the decision process win. So, what kind of change should managers make in their budget tables starting today?
First of all, they must definitely abandon the flawed barbell strategy. They need to take part of the budget from the advertisements at the very top of the funnel and invest it in the middle area where the customer compares your product with others.
So, brands will accept the fact that customers do not make decisions only on their own websites.
Exactly. They will take place in consumer forums. They will work with independent review channels. When the product is researched, they must exist fully equipped with these 4 shortcut contents on the first page of Google.
This approach actually completely changes the job description of companies' marketing departments. Being just teams that manage campaigns is no longer enough.
Very true. While your competitors list their product features one under another, you need to be the side that eliminates the customer's mental fatigue.
So, in that endless pool of information, we have to be a decision architect that filters technical details and presents the trust of the crowd and the approval of experts as a ready package.
Absolutely. Decision architects who resolve the confusion in the customer's mind close the sale instantly.
Today at the Insight Atlas table, we revealed the real reason for wasted marketing budgets and its solution with concrete data. You do not have to watch the purchase desire you awaken with advertisements go into your competitors' pockets due to lack of information.
By positioning yourself with the right cognitive shortcuts in the right places, you can secure your market share. Review your strategies starting today to become not just a player in your category, but the side that directs decisions.
See you in our next strategy analysis. Goodbye.